Investing Insights with Right Property Group, exploring trends in real estate and helping property investors gain financial security.
G'day, hey Garfield Tarrant, co-host of Property Investing Insights with the Right Property Group. Joining me in the studio, Reshmi and Victor Kumar, directors, Right Property Group, the brains trust of this outfit. Reshmi's particularly joining us. How you going? You went to our Women in Finance event the other week. How'd that go?
That was lovely.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. Nice to see a lot more women out there in this industry. Actually, I started doing finance. I used to do mortgage broking, right?
Okay.
20 years ago. Oh, more than 20 years ago. Sounds like I'm very old. Yeah, and they
Just
weren't
experienced.
Oh, yes, experienced. Oh my gosh, there were not as many women doing this before. There was a lot of women, and it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, and what was the sort of, because I didn't get a chance to get down there. I had really good feedback, but was it like, you know, good esprit de corps? Was everyone getting stuck in, enjoying each sort of networking, enjoying each company? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot
happening. Was it a long day for a lot of
It was.
Okay.
It was a good day. Actually, we loved it. The weather was nice too, and the type of people that came. You could see there's been a lot of changes in the industry. There's a lot more people there. And
was it
really
younger
generation?
Yeah, very
yes.
good. Yeah, that's what I'm noticing now when I go to a lot of our mortgages or even property events is you forget that you're not young anymore, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Try and look young.
Yeah. You're not old, like you're rocking up with your Zimmer frame or anything. You know, sort of your middle career. Let's be nice, but mortgages, real estate, particularly real estate, really attracts a young cohort. And when you go to these events, big events, and you see all these sort of young sort of estate agents there or buyers agents, you know, you go, wow.
There's a young switched on people. The world has changed, definitely. I mean, there was a lack of that before. There weren't as many people going back 20 years ago. There were not that many switched on people, I would say. When you go to events, you wouldn't see many young people. So now, definitely, yeah.
So knowing what you know, maybe this question for you, Victor, knowing what you know and your experience as a property strategist / buyer's agent / all that stuff for a couple of decades. If you were new to property, would you choose a career as a buyer's agent today, or do you reckon you were right place, right time 20 years ago when it was still quite an unknown thing and it was a very different way to operate? It's a lot more visible and competitive today. Would you choose it as a career?
It'll be much harder today than it is than it was when we started. 2001, right? So that's there were just a handful of us back then. So there was less competition, but also if you look at it from the other side, information is far easier to get and articulate today as it was in comparison to the yesteryears. So on that side, it's much easier. But in any industry, you'd want to be the trailblazer because then you get a lot of market share. But also, you are certainly able to educate and impact a lot more lives back then in comparison to now, where everyone's just flooding and flooded with all this information, drowning with all of these number of different strategies, different stuff that everyone's trying to sprout out on the social media. So it becomes harder to discern now as to who to go with. And again, being the devil's advocate here, back then, there was only a few of us to choose from. So, there was less choice. There's more choice now.
Yeah.
It was a natural progression when we went into business. Basically, you know how when people say you have to find a niche, what business you've got to pursue. For us, it was naturally we just fell into it naturally because we just found that there are not many people didn't understand how to invest in property or how to really make money out of it. So everyone you talk to, they knew they had to buy a property, but what else is there around it? And that's where we found that with our knowledge and experience that we've got, this is actually a career path. This is a business. This is a service we can provide and help people, guide them, build their wealth and do it properly and hold their hand all the way through because of with our own experiences, we've realized that this is a lack in the place, right? So.
Yeah, it's a couple of decades ago, it was a lot of people probably felt as though they stumbled on a secret of buyer's agent and went, wow, like this is good and they got all the advantages of it. Like that's now gone.
It's gone.
No.
People aren't stumbling into this thing and
No.
going, wow, I didn't know that thing existed. And,
We still do get the occasional people that never have heard of a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
Some agents, the really out of touch agents, they haven't worked with buyer's agents before. They've heard about them, but perhaps their tilt towards buyer's agents may not, and their experience with interaction with some of the buyer's agents may not have been so good. So they're not seeing the advantage of it. But it's becoming mainstream more and more.
Yeah. I think my experience has been it's great using a buyer's agent for the buy side. I sometimes don't like being on the receiving end of a buyer's agents on the sell side, right? Like, and I can imagine sort of agents find it a bit frustrating also because their offers are very different. There's a lot more contingency connected with the offers. They're a lot more thorough. It's if you what I found selling. If you're selling and the purchaser isn't using a buyer's agent, it's normally an easier transaction. But I guess that's a compliment for buyer's agents on the buy side, right?
But the buyer is benefiting.
The buyer's absolutely benefiting for it, right?
Yeah.
And I've had deals sort of come unstuck. More deals have come unstuck when a buyer's agent's been involved as a seller.
Yeah.
Purely because of the due diligence that they've got to take and
Yeah.
a lot of the conditions they put in there and there's always, and you've done it for me umpteen times, right, on the buy side. The deal is never really the deal.
No, there's always moving parts. It's just one thing when you're done, we just throw in another spanner in the works,
there's
right?
one more little thing there, and it'll be like, well, what about this over here? And you'd be like, well, that's such a contingent risk that doesn't exist as a seller. But they go, well, it's a risk that my client's not willing to take on unless they're compensated for it in the front end. So buyer's agents are good in that regard.
Well, we're not emotionally invested in it,
No,
right? So that's the advantage.
And you want to get the best deal possible.
Yeah.
And I'm going through a sell now of a couple of assets, couple that you secured for us way back when, and the key point is that the negotiation is largely not about the price. The price is largely assumed because it's a pretty easy thing to work out what the value of it is, but it's all the conditions in and around it. So
Absolutely.
so the buyer's agent is doing the right thing, but had one of those properties fall down and during cooling off.
Okay.
Because they were concerned about they heard somewhere or another that you'd know the block. I won't say on air where it is, but that there's going to be a special levy put in place to do something or other. So they went, no, I don't want to be part of it as a result of it, which I didn't even know about.
Right, well, there you go.
Yeah, I obviously don't read the body corporate. I don't know anything about it. I was like, really? I didn't know about that.
Yep.
Quick sell the thing. I don't want the problem. But like little things like that can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and this is someone doing the diligence, obviously, right? So it's fallen over because of the diligence, or it could have been adjusted in price, and that's the whole thing about it.
I think it was more of they just wanted the reason to get out. I think they could get finances.
Yeah,
well, what it really was.
Yeah,
so but anyway, so recording on a Tuesday, just after the interest rate cut. So you're probably tuning into this a few days or a week after that announcement. But 25 basis points, down to
3.85. Yeah.
3.85 from 4.1. I was sitting there thinking, maybe they might go
half
35 basis points just to clean it up and get us back to really simple 0.25 because it's hard to remember these sort of spurious sort of left and right. But what does it all mean? Any sort of initial commentary, Victor?
Yeah, look, what it means on the buying side is that naturally there'll be a bounce in price, right? Because people were sort of waiting for the social proof or that added borrowing capacity to get in the market. So naturally, whenever there is a rate cut, we tend to see a lot more resurgence of buyers in the market. And also, if there is even a muted response, there's usually a 20 to 30K bounce in pricing. In the middle price band where most people play. In the top end, it doesn't make much of a difference. Yeah, and the bottom end always ticks along. But where the action is in the 600 to say the 850 to mil purchase price, that's where you tend to see a lot more buyers re-enter the market.
Yeah.
Most people end up waiting for social proof, and we've got sort of a double whammy, triple whammy actually in here. So the uncertainty of the elections has gone, right? No commentary on the party lines.
But this is our first podcast since
the election.
So we should speak about that really quickly. So I think what Australia's voted for is continuity.
Yes.
So we've probably got 6 years ahead of us of steady as she goes, right?
Yeah. Plus, also there wasn't a better choice.
Yeah.
In terms of the opposing party did not put their best foot forward from a media presence, from a strategic presence, and perhaps using the wrong rhetorics in terms of aligning too closely to Trump.
Yes.
But the biggest tell over here, again, you could argue, party preference and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest tell here was that the Greens were annihilated in this election. They were totally on the tenants and pushing that bandwagon. But I think the general populace has spoken that we can see through all of that, and we want stability, we want continuity. Jury's still out in terms of there's still scaremongering going on in terms of we're going to tax the super unrealized gains and all this sort of stuff. Yet to be seen. It was perhaps a thought bubble. I think reality will hit and will be business as usual.
I saw the Treasurer out the other day who's pretty much going, this thing's happening. It only really affects a couple of people. They've got forward-looking, deficits. They're going to have to try and fill their coffers.
Have to fill the gap somehow.
One of the great way to fill their coffers is to tax investors more.
Yeah,
we've seen it time and time again. But what I would say, one of the I think continuity for Australia is good. The first time we've re-elected a prime minister in 2 decades or something or other, so that's not a bad thing. But one of the great outcomes, I think, of it all is some of those militant and completely unnecessarily and unfair voices from the Greens attacking property investors. I think that's now behind us, which is good.
Right,
and a new leader of the Greens, so obviously the leader was punted, didn't get re-elected. The new leader's pretty much saying, we're going to go back to our core values of climate change and other sort of green-orientated policies rather than trying to get on the bandwagon of sort of inner city renters and trying to shake things up. So that's not a bad thing. I think they called him Albo's nemesis, that Greens. I think Albo liked him very much, that Greens housing spokesperson. So thankfully that's behind us. But even today we saw the Nationals and the Coalition announced that they're parting ways. Like that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Like,
that's a big deal.
I don't know enough about it yet to make an observation around it. But anyway, we've got some stability ahead of us.
It is.
And a lot of incentives for first-time buyers.
Absolutely. And from a property investment point of view, generally when a Labor government comes in, there is a surge in property prices, right? Because they tend to have policies that are more lined away from businesses. People then flood in towards properties to shelter their money. If you look at it historically, that's what's happened. Don't know whether it'll happen this time around, but all seems to be lining up. And then coming back to the rate cut today, obviously the stability of the government has got one of the factors that will play into this bounce in property pricing. Then we've got this looming end of financial year where people are saying, I didn't do anything this financial year, I square one away in the property portfolio, or immediately after the 30th of June, they'll possibly put properties on the market or start getting properties in. And naturally, with the rate cut, it gives a lot more surety. So there is going to be a decent bounce in transactions, in what people are willing to pay for price in terms of that market, which is the your middle market below $1 million. Not talking the very low end, but where the affordability lies.
Based on affordability, maybe you guys have a view on this, and typically Victor's my go-to guy with this sort of stuff, Reshmi, because he's happy to talk about sort of the wider buyer's agent industry because he's been around for some long and he's got the confidence of 20 odd years. But I'm now hearing that, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but a lot of buyer's agents now they've got so many properties to find for their clients at particular price points that they're just layering up with clients who are sitting around waiting for the right type of property. So therefore, they're sort of, they want to see a particular amount of money that a buyer has in order to be able to buy them good quality assets at a higher rate where there's less competition from other investors and buyer's agents. Do you guys have a read on this? Have you seen this? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen that too. Like, you've got to, and at the end of the day, it's the money that decides what you're going to be able to buy and where. So we do have clients, like we've got some people waiting for like a year or so.
Yeah, they're very specific properties we're looking for, right?
That's
And they're very hard to find. You're finding a needle in a haystack, right? Well, but if you look at what the standard approach is, and this is being on the ground and in competition with a lot of these buyers agents as well, we are probably paying 20, 30K below what most buyers agents are paying. Yeah, and this is perhaps a little bit of conservatism from our end. But also,
I don't think it's conservatism. I think we know what the real value of the property is, and we are not willing to risk it for our client. And so it may take us longer to find the properties or get in because there's so much competition out there, and the value of the property may be here, but the buyer's agents are paying way more than that just to get the deal over the line. And that is not sitting well with us, and we can't do that for our clients.
Yeah.
I don't think it's conservatism.
She's more diplomatic than I am. Or maybe I am.
No, that's true.
Say as it
It's
is.
just-
Say as it is. Yeah.
You know now that I don't have a speaking voice at home, right? So she tells it the way it is. With a lot of people that they qualify for far less,
Yeah.
And this is where I agree with everyone else out there that's saying, go with a higher price. You're getting into better quality, less problematic properties.
With less competition around
With
it.
less, not necessarily less competition.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
there's still competition for...
there's competition from the home buyers, right? The owner occupiers as well in there, right? So the lower price, so let's say you're 200, 300K, you can still find those homes, right? So your price is lower because of a reason, right? And the reason is the liquidity in that market, the money flowing through that community, how many of the higher income people are living in that community. Because if you want to target the middle and higher bracket income earners, so there's more of that money flowing through, so they can afford the higher interest, rent payments, so you can increase the rents. And with the increasing rent, of course, comes increasing price, and it becomes a self-fulfilling, a prophecy in terms of growth in that area. Take away all of the other growth drivers, right? So money drives growth at the end of the day.
Okay, so we're sort of getting a little bit into investing strategies there, and I know that's something that we want to preserve for next week. And obviously we're through our special series here on Design Your Decade. This is the 5th installment of it. We've talked about the 4 Ds. Last time we got together in April, we're talking about age-appropriate investing, a really good conversation. And age is a state of mind. A lot of the times it could just be when you choose to start rather than maybe you start a little bit later in life. But there's still quite a lot of significant sort of observations we had there and insights around it. So I highly encourage everyone to go and listen to that. But everyone gets obsessed about the investing strategies. Tell me, how are we going to do this, right? But they always say you should start with the end in mind. And the end in mind for most property investors is going to be their exit strategies. So an exit strategy largely for most property investors is retiring the debt.
Yeah.
So to not have an incumbency on maintaining the ability to generate cash flow to service debts, or if it's negatively geared to service those debts. So at a point in time, you want to be clean and clear with a view towards generating income. So that's what the most general, realistic and traditional investment strategies. So let's talk investment strategies today. Do people get excited about about exit strategies, Reshmi?
People don't know exit strategies. People just want to start investing. People talk about for example, between yesterday and today. Yesterday, I spoke with somebody who's come up with someone saying I should do this. Someone says I should be doing this, and I'm just so confused. There's so many strategies out there. You tell me what I should be doing. I had to say, look, there's so many strategies out there that you could do. But is that really what you're trying to do? Or we're looking at your wealth creation. What do you want to achieve out of this? So it comes back to the goal again. So, and then to achieve your goal, we could do so many different strategies to get you there, but you don't have to focus on the strategies itself, that what do I do? So there's an end result. And then we're talking about entering, you're wanting to get started. Have you thought about how you will exit it? How will you retire the debt?
How are you going to finish? So the finish is retiring the debt, essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if you retire the debt, that's great, because it probably means you're going to be generating quite significant positive income. But with retiring the debt, it manufactures a whole new litany of other problems and challenges you need to consider, as in what are you going to do with this asset in the future?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you know, that's when an asset actually becomes a liability, right?
Yeah.
When you've got to work out what am I going to do with it, right?
Yeah,
like, so
absolutely.
it's a whole other layer of
We have that
of planning
conversation
around it.
going. Yeah, we talk about that kind of stuff. What are we going to do with all
Yeah.
these
What are you
things?
going to do with it all?
And that's our household
yeah,
conversation as well.
yeah.
So like this weekend, we
We were
about
talking
that,
about, yeah.
what does it look like? It's we've accumulated all these assets. We've got debt on a few of the properties, and we pay all of them off. What are we going to do? What does it look like? Why are we striving to do this? Right. So all of those conversations do start happening.
It's quite a difficult conversation maybe to have, because you sit there and go, well, how much more money do you need?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
like really,
Yeah.
you know, and that sounds quite sort of elitist, but you know, how much do you need? It's not going to change things too much, right?
Just the size of the boat.
Just the size of the boat. So, but you can only have so many boats. Victor, you know, I don't know what your, but everyone's got a version of the boat, right?
Yeah.
But it gets to a point also where, and you see a lot when people build large portfolios or they create good wealth through business. You know, often there's a real sort of realization of like when you get there, it's probably not that great, right? You can only use one boat at a time. You know, you can only go on so many holidays. So like the realization of what an actual exit looks like, it can be quite confronting to people.
Yeah, it is, and often because it's not normal in inverted commas to have no mortgages on your properties, especially if they're investment properties, because everyone focuses on paying off their home, right, and that's the major focus. We tend not to think about, okay, if we paid off our investment properties, what's going to happen? Because the first thing that that's been drummed into us is that, well, if you pay off your investment properties, you'll pay tax. Yeah, of course you will, because you're earning more income, right? And that's a good thing.
That's one of the other consequences, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So we need to then decide right from the beginning in terms of which entities we're buying, what we're buying, and how many we're buying.
Yeah.
To then say, okay, there needs to be now a change in tempo, change in types of properties, change in outlook to start paying things down, right? Now, and there's only 4 ways to pay things off. When you drill it right down, 4 ways to pay things off. Surplus PYG or business income, surplus portfolio income, which we'll come back to, or you sell something, right? Bananas, houses, whatever. And the 4th is you win lotto, right? Now, I haven't seen many that have actually done the 4th one, but we've certainly helped people set up for the 3, and we've had quite a few people exit out of some of the mortgages. It's a longer process, so more people put credence on the initial stages, which is the acquisition of properties, owning the properties, yet then don't leave enough time to pay all of these off. Because they think that something magical will happen and all of a sudden we'll get to that income that we're always after. But that's a longer bit, right? And that's what we want to talk about, is to say, okay, there are nuances in here that we need to address first before we even start talking strategy as to what we're buying, age-appropriate investing, all of those things, because we need to make sure that we are able to get out of this mortgage. And then there's several variations, several flavoring that we put on that as well in terms of, okay, as an example, I spoke with a new client that was onboarding, and their plan is to buy a principal place of residence in the northern beaches with a budget of 2 to 3 mil. That's in 7 years' time. So investing for them looks very different to someone that hasn't got that milestone happening. So the portfolio we put together here and the plan, which is to, okay, we're going to put these 3-4 properties in. The whole plan is that we double or triple your deposit so that you're getting that big deposit to get into the principal place of residence at that point in time. Depending on what the finance climate looks like at the time, we may even sell down. So entity is really important.
So how old are these people?
So they're in their late 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've got plenty of time.
I would challenge the fact that they go down this pathway of property investing, they're going to change their strategy straight away.
And that's what I flagged with them as well. Yes, absolutely.
You're just going to you're going to start down that way.
Yes.
And this is like, I reckon I'm, as someone that works in and around property and pretty much knows I can access the best advice in Australia, right? Like,
and goals change.
Yeah. Goals change, but I've probably done everything wrong in many ways, but also everything right. It depends how you want to sort of view it, because I didn't start investing with an exit in mind.
No.
No.
I never went, and it's still changing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We did start with a income goal, but it never.
But it's just
came
never
to that, right?
But
Yeah,
it was
it
just
changed.
it was never really I never invested in property for the purpose of replacing income.
Yeah.
Like, it's only really now that I sit there going, okay, like, it'd be nice to actually, like, if I get paid pretty well, like if I was able to get paid through probably what I'm paid today, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah.
To do that's pretty hard though.
Yeah.
I
Like-
think we always had the 1.2
Yes.
in mind for whatever reason. It's a huge number that we just plucked out of thin air just like that, and we thought, well, we'll just keep going, see how far we can go. But that's the
it.
reason, right?
That's it, Rod.
Yeah.
I don't have that. Like, I still don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't know. So I've probably done everything wrong.
Yeah.
That said, though, everything is set up for the optionality that I'll get that right. So all of my assets are in the right structures.
Yep.
You know, they're good from a long-term estate point of view. They're good for the immediacy of tax and compliance and all, like, it's all set up really, really well. Like, it's little bits and bobs I've had to tweak along the way, but it's largely pretty good. So it gives me a huge amount of optionality. So it means I can continue to keep building, but when I need to actually go, okay, what does the end look like? I go, okay, well, they're good assets and I'll be able to work it out.
And the thing is that we tend to become property hoarders.
Yeah, that's the
right?
problem. Yeah, absolutely right. And then, but that's the immediacy for most people. With an exit strategy, you're thinking about yourself or yourself and your partner, whatever your version of that looks like. That's okay, but then there's what's after that is where a lot of people do struggle with, right?
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
But it also drives a lot of strategies. I want to create generational wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I think one key point we're missing is when you're entering, you have to really look at how many years you're going to be in it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to stop, and that's the exit. And then what life looks like after
No
that.
one
So
stops,
no
though.
one stops. Yeah, no one stops.
No one
so
stops.
That's the thing.
Most people stop when the bank goes, no more
No more
money
money.
for you.
Yeah.
Right? When the banks start getting jittery about sort of 25, 30 year mortgages, when you sort of get to your late 50s, they
Can't
start-
really discriminate on age,
No.
right?
If you're making money, they'll still lend
Yeah,
it to
they'll
you.
still lend, right? We've got we've helped people that are 70 years old to get mortgages as well, right? So they're still lending there. Obviously, they may put a constraint to say, you know what, no interest only. You know, it's all principal and interest, and it's going to be a 20-year loan, all the sort of things, right? The reality is we're going to be living longer, working longer as well, right? And this is where, particularly for our generation and the next generation, this exit strategy in terms of retiring the debt is really important. Otherwise, the tendency is you continue working and you continue accumulating and you continue holding that mortgage because it just becomes norm, right? So there needs to be a focused effort to actually pay down some of the debt. Now, whether it's the principal place of residence, whether it is the investment properties where you're offloading the debt of enough properties to perhaps get enough unencumbered rental coming in to support the home mortgage. That's another exit strategy. So it has many different tiers of exit.
Yeah.
It's not that, we're going to have a totally unencumbered portfolio. It could be, okay, does it give me enough of a lifestyle boost? Does it take away pressure from my principal place of residence? Does it actually allow me to sell some to build or buy a dream home or build a dream home and still retain some of the properties and have minimal debt on the principal place of residence? They're all different variations, which is a conversation that happens in the 10 years. So when you're designing a decade, it happens in the 10 years of constantly coming in and checking in, because as you build your portfolio, as you see how hard it is to actually put a good portfolio together, you start having these thought processes, the goals start changing, as life happens, age happens, kids going into school, and then when that pressure is released, when they've finished school, all of a sudden you say, okay, yeah, I think I don't need that many properties, I don't need that much income. So all of those conversations need to start happening to start shaping how we're going to retire mortgages. And it always first starts with when you're initially building a portfolio. For most people, generally, you're accumulating a negative cash flow property portfolio.
Well, it's impossible largely to
No.
not
Largely
do
these
that.
days, yeah. Unless you're compromising on the quality, the growth quality of the asset, right? And so the first step is then to perhaps dampen the negative cash flow. So that could be something as simple as coming back and building a secondary dwelling on one or two of the properties, or doing a subdivision, or enhancing the rent, right? Early on we were talking about NDIS, and that's another can of worms that everyone's starting to latch
leave
onto.
that alone at the moment.
But we will certainly address that at some point in time.
So we're increasing our cash flow by doing those strategies so that we can retire those debts.
Yep.
So there's a negative connotation, and maybe this is, again, it's a generational cultural norm for Australia, but maybe this expectation is that you're not supposed to die with debt will change.
It will definitely
in
change.
time.
Yes.
So debt is something you die with rather than and that is going to be baked into.
Well, if our children are going to benefit from it, then they might as well carry on.
But this is the point, right? And what with really good estate planning, you can actually create the mechanisms for saying,
Absolutely.
hey,
Yeah.
so you don't leave the
Trust and
problem.
so forth,
I know a lot of people with estate planning go, stuff it, they can sort it out. I don't really care.
No,
Right?
that's a wrong thing to do by your kids.
I know,
right?
but
So,
but some people's attitude is like that. So, but you can actually have the instructions in your estate plan that say, it's okay to die with debt, but do this to retire the debt. That can happen subsequent to it with the right estate planning.
And I'm glad you touched on that, right? So one of the things that I absolutely love when I see a deceased estate, and there's 4 beneficiaries to that, because I just simply go to them and say, look, it's we'll do a quick deal, 100K less. It's only 25K less to each of you. You'd be surprised at how eager they are to snap up the money, right? Because they could utilize the money to pay down their debt on their principal place of residence or whatever. So they haven't done the hard work, right? So estate planning as part of your retirement, your debt retirement, is really critical, and having a good estate planner is absolutely
So it's
important.
okay to die with debt, though.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I think as people live longer and their working lives increase, and attitudes towards debt as a vehicle for property investment or leverage, it is something you could, inverted commas, do in your retirement.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people,
Gives you something to tinker with.
That's a retirement will be. And I imagine I'll be investing probably to the day I cark it, I would imagine.
I'd be consulting till I die, most likely, and I'd also be investing till I die. Because this is something that gives me purpose.
Yeah, and it's fulfilling.
Yeah,
when you win.
Absolutely,
and it's also it's important not to always win. You know?
Yeah, you need to have those taps on your shoulders every now and then. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just listening to both of you and thinking, do you not have any other passions other than just, I'll be investing, I'll be consulting?
You've got to pay for it somehow.
Yeah, you got very expensive habits. Yeah.
But I think it's as a mechanism, like if you're doing it full time, like I can do it, but as a mechanism for why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Like, and again, to me, it provides optionality, and you can work out the option as long as you have the right protections and layers of protections around it and have an exit strategy, right? I guess to a point, well, how much is enough? How do you, and this needs to be the choice with planning. You can only start with the end in mind. If your end in mind is you want to live on a beach in Bahamas, that's cool. And
You've got to work hard.
You could probably build a good portfolio and do that, right? And live out there, and that's fine. Whatever your end goal is, like I'm not going to be judging that. Like some people have someone want to go rescue dogs from India or somewhere crazy. Well, whatever it is, I don't know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to be willing to, you have to understand that whatever the goal is, there is hard work involved, and how much of your brain space do you really want to give it? How much stress do you really want to take? So what does your life, what does your lifestyle look like after you've done your wealth creation? Let's say you've done the 10 years, 15 years. What does it look like? What were you aiming for? And I'm telling you, people don't think about those things. No. People don't know.
Yeah. Well, what I find the biggest issue you have today is that because of how some wealthy property investors are presented, a lot of wealthy property investors out there you don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Most of them you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like you have no idea, right? There'll be old families, been doing it for 3 generations. Don't say boo to anyone, right? You know,
They'll be surprised as to how much they owe.
There is so much of that out there, but what the immediacy of what people see though is something that's quite flashy these days, and building large portfolios is out of the realms of most people's.
It is.
You know, only fractions of percents are going to be building large portfolios. You know, and that's reality, right? And we need to temper all these discussions with what the reality of most people's exit strategy is probably 3 unencumbered properties.
True. We've got a client.
I don't want to talk it down, but that's probably
that's
3.
norm.
Yeah.
That's norm, right?
That's how it should be. I don't know what pushed us to just buy as many properties as we could. I don't know. We were just in our 20s and we just had to do it.
Yeah.
We just had to prove something. For what? I have no idea. But we just kept going and we said, we can do this, we can do this.
It's not a bad consequence though.
No,
No.
people can benefit from that experience that we've gathered, right? Now, we've got a client that is actually now, he lives in, I think from memory, in Indonesia, right? And a young bloke. And he owns 4 properties, which we are in the process of retiring the debt. And his goal is to buy a yacht and sail the waters there, right? And we're a couple of years away from that. So
how's he retiring a debt? Business income?
He's got a really good high-paying job.
Yep.
So he's fly in, fly out. So he's pumping
So
that
he's
in.
pumping all this cash
Pumping
into.
all his cash. So while he's working, he's pumping all that because he's got a very fixed goal.
Yep.
And he's sold down 1 or 2 properties.
Yeah,
And that's really reduced the debt burden. And we've also in the process of building a few more dwellings on the existing properties.
Okay.
So it's all all the 3 things that we talked about in terms of debt reduction, we've
Implementing
implemented.
all
So
that.
he's been very hands-on and tactical.
Hands-on.
Yes.
This doesn't happen by accident.
No, it doesn't.
No.
You got to be focused, right?
Yeah.
So then there are other clients where we've had a client that started using our services way back, right, in the early 2000s, and he's now in the process of selling down half of his portfolio
Okay.
with good accounting advice, so that he can shelter as much of the tax as possible.
Has he built up some losses on the way he can absorb?
No comment.
Maybe.
And so the plan there is that he will pay down. Now, put it in perspective, right? If you're thinking to today's properties, you're paying 800K, 600K. Now, back then, we bought exactly in the same areas. We bought these houses for 198, 250s and all that. They've gone up substantially in value. So we don't have to sell
days.
down that many properties to totally pay out the debt. So what I'm trying to portray over here is that this is not an overnight thing.
No.
You go through that decade, your prices, if the market has been favorable to you and your selections are good, your prices will definitely jump up.
Yep.
Then the next decade could be focused on, okay, how do we pay this down? Do I selectively sell some? Do I build some more dwellings to bolster up the negative cash, the cash flow? Or it could be that we go one big bang, good positive cash flow property, be it a commercial, be it a development, and we're selling down some of the initial ones that are starting to become a lot more maintenance heavy. Pour all of our money into this commercial or development property that reduces the debt on it significantly, and it gives you the positive cash flow that then becomes part of your now process of paying down the mortgages or using that for lifestyle.
So what I would say, Reshmi, is critical to a good exit if you're using property investment as a mechanism for wealth creation is capital growth.
Capital growth, yes. And the type of property you select, because if you're in it from the beginning, if you select the right type of property, right, you know how when people talk about whether should I be buying a unit or a house, right? And in our portfolio, we've got a couple of units in there, and now, like when we started, right, and now coming back so many years later, these are the properties that we were able to quickly retire the debt on, and they're funding the basically they're paying the mortgage of the other properties, right? So there's that question, like in the beginning when we're thinking about should I be buying a unit or should I be buying a house? Units had their place, and now they're the first ones for the rent.
But did you buy them for the purpose of that when you went back then?
The pay down
yeah,
easy properties, yes.
The easy to pay down properties,
Yeah.
they were bought for that purpose.
Okay, just so that essentially being the cash out for the negative cash flow you have in other assets. Right? Pinch pairing properties.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been doing this for 25 odd years. How often do people get the exit right versus how often do they get the exit wrong?
There may be a bit. Most people are too premature.
Okay.
Right? They
It's too early.
Yeah, too early because they aren't able to sustain the pressure.
It's
Life
only
happens.
25 years, right?
Yeah,
Let's say
yeah.
if you started 25 years ago and those people are in their 40s, maybe 30s, like they're still probably working.
Still got plenty of time. Yeah.
And that's the point, right? With a good exit, you're going to get a better exit if you've been investing longer.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd been investing longer and if you had a clear-cut sort of goal and then you stuck, most people start and then they haven't kind of gotten the goal and they're halfway through, they realize, okay, this is what I could do.
Yeah.
And then things change. And so we're kind of meandering all the way through, but it's very hard to have one set goal. I'm going for it and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
It's about recalibration on the way. And I think about my own, like, I get reality checks more than anyone of like, I should be doing more. And that's still
You know what?
probably-
Part of it is, and I have the same problem as well, right? You see all of these people, you talk to all these people and say, oh, I could be doing that as well. And then you have to actually hold yourself back to say, no, I've got a good portfolio. Stick to the basics.
See, I don't think I've got a good portfolio because I look at other people's portfolio and go, oh, it should be bigger. And
Don't we always do that to ourselves?
but it's true, right? I go, but it's, and I'm not a big comparing person, and as much as I try and avoid it, I try not to compare myself to other people. But then I speak about utility, and everyone can get the same thing. I'm just fortunate enough to probably have greater access to it. It's about the execution of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like yes, you can do all this stuff, but you've got to carve out the time and make the energy and effort. But then you go, well, I don't know. Most people probably think I've got a good property portfolio. I look at it and just go, oh, yeah, it's okay.
Because it's normal.
Yeah.
For you, it's normal.
That's the thing, right?
That's the thing. Yeah. So
And you compare yourself with two people. I know people with portfolios twice, triple, 4 times the size of mine, and I go, yeah, I could be doing that.
yeah, or the other way as well.
Yeah.
There's people that have less properties but have better quality properties.
Better quality properties, and you go, oh, yeah, it's but it's hard. It's hard to compare, right?
That's right. Yeah, and so one of the things that we were saying is that you got to be buying the right types of properties and so forth, right? A lot of people, they just get caught up in just buying property and buying in the area. So each property needs to be bought with a purpose.
Yeah.
Needs to be bought with the thought of, okay, what can I do with this to further squeeze out cash flow, to further squeeze out equity?
Yeah.
How does it click into everything else that I've already got, and how does it actually get me closer to my goal, which will keep changing. The goals will keep changing. I acknowledge that, right? But unless you look at those things, you'll end up buying, just a 3-bedder in just a set and forget home, which most people tend to do, and then you're in the numbers game. You really want the numbers you want to be playing is the numbers within your portfolio in terms of where the cash flow can be, not necessarily where it is right now, but where it can be by doing X, Y, and Z, and how can I actually reduce the number of properties that I'm purchasing to actually get to that, right? Within reason, right? So,
and that runs counter to how a lot of things are presented. Like how many properties got, like, it's really funny as you invest, and I'm in my second decade now of investing. And I like to think I started investing in my mid-30s, and, I'll have 40, good years, right? Like, my portfolio, I'm not going to have a problem with the size of the value of my portfolio at the end of my investing journey, right? Or when I choose to retire, whatever it looks like. But the challenge you have, though, is that you start off and you're a lot more mechanical in your investing, and you guys must find this. But then, as you become more experienced, your life gets more complicated. You start looking at different sort of properties where you go, I get that. I could maybe live in there one day. When I'm sort of not working anymore, and I could use it. On weekends, or you start making different decisions around it because you layer in complexity. You go, oh, that'd be great for the kids.
Yeah,
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
It's crap now, but what a great place for when they're at university. You make those decisions. And you go, well, what happens if they go to university there? So things, you start complicating your investment decision making because you try and layer in more uses of a property than just maybe what you would foundationally do when you're starting investing, where you're just going, all the properties that you guys bought us up in Queensland, I never seen them.
Yep.
I don't even know if they exist. Yeah, I've seen
They actually
photos
don't.
of
They
it.
actually don't.
But,
Yeah, we doctored them
the
up.
Victor's
Yeah.
Ponzi scheme, right? But you know what? You guys must do the same thing, right? Where you
Yeah.
start buying
Yep.
different stuff, but then you go, it'll be all right.
Yep.
It'll be
I
okay.
think we were a little bit more strict because Victor's left so many properties and said, oh, we can gain 50,000, let's say, in 6 months' time with this particular. No, it's too little for what we are trying to do. So we
so it
leave
wouldn't move the needle anymore,
No.
right?
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
So what moves the needle for you guys now? It's got to be hundreds
Hundreds of thousands.
in order to get your attention.
Yep.
And this is something that changes as well, right?
Yes.
You
That's
know?
right. I mean, in the early days, if I was getting an instant equity of 50K, I'd grab it with both hands,
Yeah.
right? Now I'm thinking, why?
Yeah. But which is okay,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
on the same go, it's just the juice ain't worth the squeeze,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know. And you
Yeah.
go, well, it's a hassle, and we're going to do financing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's just not worth it, right?
Yeah.
But that's
wanted-
normal.
I just wanted to share a story of an exit strategy. I mean, you might be better at telling this story about the plan was to have a $50,000 income coming from a portfolio every year. Remember, this one of the clients we're talking about, part-time teacher. You might remember a couple of years ago achieved it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So it is possible. We just thought, we're talking about how people meander and, and things they keep adding on and there's no clear-cut exit. There are clients who have actually done it. So there was this clear-cut plan. Yeah, so you can share.
Yeah,
this.
so they had a property up in the mountains, Blue Mountains, right? So and this we're talking back when we started, right? So when we started buying, so back 2012, and we got a few properties, and the plan was very strategic: a couple of units, a couple of houses. We then put our head down and started paying them down. And the husband also got a redundancy package, which we pumped into the portfolio. The end goal they wanted was simply having a 50K passive income from the portfolio, which we hit about 7 years ago for them. And now they are gainfully retired, as opposed to gainfully employed. Taking into account buffers and all that for interest rate fluctuations and all. COVID obviously helped with big surge in their growth in the portfolio, but it was all strategic sell downs, strategic bills, a strategic pay down of mortgages. But their advantage was they had come in with minimal debt on their principal place of residence, so that we didn't have to worry about that, right? So the bigger your debt on your principal place of residence, the harder it becomes to unencumber the portfolio because you've got this big repayment sword hanging over you.
Yeah, and that is probably the biggest metaphorical handbrake that most investors have is large. They max out on their principal place of residence, which pretty much stifles any other investment. But therefore, you need to make a choice. Well, do you rent where you live and invest? And for some people, that's a non-negotiable, right? Where they go, no, I need a
It's what stage of life you're in. I was just talking to somebody today, a lady actually, same thing. I'm in a couple of years, I want to buy my home. And so this property that I'm looking at buying now as an investment, should I, instead of doing that, should I just buy my home now? And it's like, okay, you'll have to do the sums because when are the children coming? When do you really want to move out by? She's only 29. So it's those pros and cons, and so investing doesn't have to be rigid that this is what I'm starting and this is where I'm going. So that's why it takes time. Your lifestyle happens, and then as we said, goals change, things happen, and so you just go according to that at the back of your mind that that's what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
So,
And for some
people are wired so differently in that regards, right? Like a lot of people think on that basis, well, the house that we buy today, that needs to be the home that we live in for the next 30 years and where I raise our children, right?
Yeah.
Versus, well, we can have a principal place of residence. Let's just buy a 2-bedroom unit. We're only going to have one kid maybe and need one room and that'll do for 3 years.
Yep.
Yes.
And then we can do the next one. But it's
Yeah.
such a mindset thing, right?
It is.
It
It
is.
is. And for some people, it makes more sense to buy the principal place of residence first before they start investing. And for others, it may be in the reverse, right? So like the example I said earlier in terms of, getting into the northern beaches, we need to invest first to bolster up the deposit.
Yeah.
Right? So, but there's a clear-cut strategy there. And then once they've bought their principal place of residence, once the dust settles and they are able to qualify for further finance and their household income and cash flow tolerance allows them to buy more properties, that's when we go back into the investing bandwagon and start bolstering again.
How often have you actually seen people go, I'm going to start investing in property and I'm going to do that for a number of years, so I'm going to sell everything, raise enough money to buy a principal-based residence? They start off with that strategy in mind. How often does that actually happen?
A couple of people, we know for,
Well, they go,
for sure.
no, we'll keep the investment properties, work out another way to do it.
No, we're seeing a few people with the result.
It's not a bad way to do it, to be fair.
These are the people who would have started with us like ages ago, long time ago. We've seen them kind of go through that phase and get into a nicer home, dream home scenario.
Horses for courses.
Horses for courses, absolutely. Right? But it all comes back to at some point in time, you need to retire the mortgage. Nothing magical happens at the end of the portfolio to get you into positive cash flow, massive positive cash flow. You need to be a concentrated effort. There are few strategies, but strategies then can be sprinkled with fairy dust to make it a little bit more, in line with what you're trying to achieve. So whilst there are those three strategies, there are pathways we take that deviate away and comes back to a different shortcut, back to the same outcome.
Yeah, it's intriguing. A lot of people don't start with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably one of them. I've probably got to recalibrate things a little bit and maybe get a plan in place. But, my portfolio will be forgiving because it's probably...
You started early.
I've started early. It's probably been built pretty well.
Yeah.
There's no real dud assets. There's some assets in it which you go, but it's going to give me optionality and choice. So there's nothing structurally wrong with it which will compromise my ability to retire debt. It's just how I choose go about doing it, right? Which is okay, and no doubt you probably fall in the same bucket, right?
Yeah.
It's been built well, which gives you choice.
That's right, and don't get caught up in the number of properties, right? I don't.
The language has sort of changed a little bit.
It has changed.
It has changed a bit because back in the day when you could buy a couple of $100,000 properties, it was easy.
Then it was number of properties was easy.
It was easy, right? And the difference between what people were earning then versus what properties were worth is very different to what properties are worth and what people are earning today. So just inherently structurally, it's not about. There's not people walking around with 50, 60, 70 properties, unless they're all in regional Australia, buying for a couple $100,000, which you can still find.
Yeah,
so
or they're generational.
They're generational. Yeah. And generational assets do get split as well at some point, right?
They do.
Big portfolios get sliced up at some point in time, or it's retained. And some of the nightmare stories I've heard around sort of families fighting around property assets.
Money does strange things.
It does, right? So there's ways you can mitigate that as well. I speak to a good estate lawyer around it, but that's cool. That's good. I think we've been pretty clear on this.
Yeah.
So if people want to come on a chat with you, they should at least have a sense for what the exit is.
What they're aiming for in the end,
Yeah.
right? So it gives us an aiming point. So just like going on a journey, if you're dialing the GPS, you need to have an end destination in mind, right? So even if it's just a suburb, not the street. So we plug that in, it takes you down, and then you can then choose, fastest route or less
Scenic
tolls
route.
or the scenic route. And that's how the investing journey would happen.
And how often do you hear unrealistic expectations of what retirement should look like? Or are most people reasonably balanced or conservative?
You do a lot more.
Yeah,
that
I
side
think
of things.
I'm starting to see less and less of unrealistic stuff. Like there was a time, especially just pre-COVID, people would come in, sit down with us, say, I want to retire in 5 years, I want to have 150,000, I've got 100,000 to get started with, right? Technically possible. I'd say that you'd be taking extreme risks, right? Now, most people are of the ilk that we will take our time to get to this. And when I'm talking to them, I'm of course talking about the life milestones as well, because we need to dial that back into the journey as well. It's not just about buying properties, so that the property doesn't become an impedance of lifestyle. Yes, there may be some sacrifices you need to make, but like I keep saying, lifestyle in the forefront and investing in the background.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. So what next? If people want to have a chat to you about this, just track you down.
Well, if you want to get something done, you need to take action. So the action you need to take is jump onto our website, rightpropertygroup.com.au, hit the contact me button. It'll download a form. You can ping us on our socials, or do it the old-fashioned way. Give us a call.
Wow, old school.
I know. And hope that I don't pick up the phone because...
Do you ever pick up the phone anymore?
Occasionally.
I hope I pick up the phone. I love chatting to people, I tell you.
Great.
Yeah, I'll have to prioritize me off the phones. Yeah. So now if you're wanting to call us 1300 302 166,
Okay.
and during business hours, of course, and we'll make time.
Yeah.
We may not be able to talk to you straight away. We'll take your details and we'll set up a time where both of us have got some relaxed time and we'll have a chat.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah, nice one. Well, thanks for coming in. Okay, it's always good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Good. So that's our fifth installment of Design Your Decade. So we're going to be talking about investing strategies.
Yes.
But now we can do that on the basis of everyone should know what
The
exit
plan
looks
is-
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. And it's okay to retire with debt.
It is
It
absolutely
is okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to, but yeah.
You wouldn't want to?
No.
Yeah, try and avoid it. Yeah, it'd be nice not to have to worry about it. It's cool.
But I'll tell you, when the properties started being paid out, the domino effect, we didn't talk about that as much, the snowball effect of properties retiring the debt. That really gives you a really good sense of achievement, a good feeling.
I look at some of the properties that sit within the smart property investment portfolio now, and I look at the mortgages on them, and I just go,
They're minuscule, aren't
I
they?
go, I just look and go, oh, it's not that much. You know, like you go, the numbers start changing over the years, right?
course,
Yeah.
Then I look at other stuff and go, oh, God. you
That's
know.
why there's the
Yeah.
strategies. We could have talked about some strategies of how to retire the debts, which we didn't kind of get to. But like doubling up, like buying 10, paying 5, we kind of sort of went
Yeah.
there somehow.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
when you call us,
You can do all that then.
We can
Yeah,
do all
yeah.
of
Yeah, we
that.
can
So
do
it's really happy to people come and go, hey, I built this portfolio. How do I transact out of it, right?
Yeah. The
It's
problem is
good
people
advice.
take too long to build it.
Yeah.
You have to accumulate your properties quickly, so you got a longer time to pay off.
Yeah.
If you take all your time to build it, to buy all these properties, you'll take your time, like one in 5 years' time, in another one in 5 years' time.
Yes, go hard.
So it's just, yeah. Yeah, you
So
don't-
it's not too like you can still do this. So if someone's starting today with a good chunk of change, you could buy hard, and there's markets in Australia where you could buy hard right now.
Absolutely, across Australia, right?
Yeah.
So one of our clients, we are onto his 9th property, and he started 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That-
it
that's-
is possible.
It's moving quickly.
Yeah, he's
right?
moving quickly, but he's got.
Is he refinancing or he had?
He's refinancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're selecting the property as well. It's a renovation strategy that we've built up for him, and he's got tolerance for negative cash flow.
Yeah.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it can be done.
It can be done.
So you could set yourself up by 2 years of hard buying now for 20 years' time for that.
yeah,
to look good.
absolutely.
See, I look at 20 years and I say first 5,
It's
go hard.
accumulation.
Yeah.
accumulate, and then we can take it easy, and then we look at the retirement.
Time
Yeah.
it down. Okay.
Okay.
Very good. All right. I'm gonna have a chat with you as well. I've got to do some more buying. I keep talking about it, but I will do.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, no, don't worry. We'll sort it out. We'll sort it out. Just got to find the time.
What's stopping you from calling him? You call him.
I'd probably have to pay for the wine.
Probably. He's going, have you got your finance done? I'm doing it now. But anyway, Property Investing Insights with the Right Property Group. Hope you enjoyed that. We're only looking, just before we jumped on board 5 years ago in the COVID pandemic and
Yeah.
chatting about that. And we listened to a snippet really quickly. And what the snippet was have your buffers in place.
Yeah.
If you've got your buffers in place, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
That was the council back in March of 2020, and same logic
Same logic.
today. Go and tune into it. We should let's go both listen to it and
Yeah.
see
Oh,
how.
we can play a snippet.
We could do. That'd be really good.
Yeah.
But go and tune in. It'd be really cool. It's all relevance today as much as then. Go and check the guys out. Right Property Group. That's RIGHC propertygroup.com. You can find them on all the socials as well. Just give them a call. That's what I'd be doing. You don't have to sit there and send a long email. Just pick up the phone and give them a bell. Do it the old-fashioned way. The old-fashioned is typically the best way. But I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for joining us on Property Investing Insights. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature, does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.